In J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, the novel starts off with Holden Caulfield, a 16-year-old teenage boy who gets kicked out of a prepped high school since he was flunking all of his classes, except English. Woohoo! Before he was required to officially leave the dorms in school, Holden got in a fight with his roommate Stradlater after finding out that Stradlater and Holden's childhood friend Jane possibly did the woohoo on a date. It ticked off Holden, so he threw a punch and also got one in return. After busting it out between the two, Holden has the urge to leave Panensi High School immediately. Since he didn't tell his parents about getting kicked out of school, Holden decides to go further into New York. While taking a taxi to the hotel, Holden asked the driver a question about ducks, which made him seem like a weirdo and pissed off the taxi driver. When he did get to the hotel, though, he felt super lonely, to the point where he decided to hire a prostitute. His loneliness could be shown clearly, though. He hired a prostitute only to end up trying to talk to her. He ends up getting beaten up by the prostitute's pimp and having even more money taken from him. He later calls up his friend, Sally. They watch a show together in which he was not too fond of, but then they go out for ice skating. After having a lot of fun, Holden then suddenly breaks down and starts ranting to Sally about all kinds of stuff, like the phonies at his prep school and how lonely he is. He claims that he wants to run away together with Sally, but she thought of his dreams as ridiculous. Holden gets offended and calls Sally a royal pain in the ass, leaving her crying all by herself. He then meets up with Carl Luce, a guy who used to go to the same school as him, who was 3 years older. They met up, but Holden only wanted to talk about the sex, and Carl was creeped out, so he suggested a psychoanalysis since his dad was a doctor. Holden asked if Carl's father ever analyzed his own son, which obviously made Carl mad. Like, who would even ask something like that? So Carl left Holden. Holden then becomes super lonely, like he was walking to Central Park to see ducks and everything. It was to the point where he couldn't hold it in and risked going home just to see his younger sister, Phoebe. He did meet up with her. He talked with her a brief while, catching up with her. He then talks about how he decided to leave New York and move out to West all by himself. He ends up breaking into tears when Phoebe gives her brother her Christmas money, and Holden gives her his red hunting hat. He then visits one of his old teachers, Mr. Antolini, and he was sleeping over at his house until the teacher did some sketchy stuff that forced Holden to leave. He ends up sleeping on a bench in the waiting room of the Grand Central Station. He wakes up the next morning, he sees children, and he becomes super nervous. Like, it was to the point where he imagined himself never talking to anyone ever again and marrying a deaf-mute girl. Like, what the heck? He ends up meeting with Phoebe again, and they go to the zoo together this time. Phoebe gives back his red hunting hat, and she talks it out with him, like, not to move out by himself. He gets super happy when watching her on a carousel, that he thinks he might even cry. So he talks about all of this, his story, in a mental hospital. He tells his doctor he didn't even want to talk about his story, since talking about what happened to him makes him miss all the people in his story. After having Holden experience so many things, so much loneliness, how can Holden stay true to himself in a world marked by phoniness and people being fake to one another? I mean, even in the beginning of the book, he describes his brother, DB, as out in Hollywood, being a prostitute. Holden here describes his brother as a prostitute because he knows his brother fell into the world of pleasing people, writing books, producing money. He knows his brother will do anything to please people because that's what gets him money in Hollywood, even if it means being fake. Even with Sally, when Holden called Sally to ask her out on a date, she thought of it as grand. But Holden thought, if there's one word I hate, it's grand. It's so phony. But that is so ironic because Holden is so phony, so not genuine himself. He always uses that whatever kind of tone, like he talks about everything like it's nothing, even some serious stuff. Like the time when he talks about how he grew 6 inches and a half, and that's how he practically got tuberculosis and went to go get all these quote unquote goddamn checkups and stuff. And then he goes on saying, I'm pretty healthy though. Like, bruh. No, you ain't. You sick. Or even how Holden talked about how his younger brother Ali died. Of course, it's understandable. When your blood relative passes away, it's sad. And when Holden shares how he broke all the windows on his family station wagon. It's understandable. He's frustrated. He needs to take something out. But when he talks about how he can't make a real fist anymore because he broke all the windows, he quotes, "Outside of that, I don't care much. I mean, I'm not going to be a goddamn surgeon or violinist or anything anyway." Like, boy, doesn't matter if you're not going to be a sergeant or violinist or anything. Like, Holden seems like the phoniest of all phonies when he says he doesn't care about something that caused him so much pain and agony. But although Holden seems to contradict himself many, many times, you can actually see him being genuine through his language. Heck, you can even see that through his actions. When his brother Ali died and he broke all the windows, it's obvious that he broke it because he was in so much pain and agony. It'd be great if he can just talk it out, but you can tell he genuinely is not comfortable with that. He can't do that. So that's why he decided to go all berserk and break everything. You can also tell that Holden genuinely does not know how to genuinely express his feeling by the way he uses the word you. When talking about Ali, he talked about how nice he was, how intelligent he was, and how he laughed at everything. Then he goes on saying, "You'd have liked him." What he really means is that he really liked him. Holden does not have the guts to say, "I really liked him. I liked how nice he was. I liked how intelligent he was," because the fact that it was all in the past causes him so much pain. The fact that his brother had already died causes him so much agony that he can't get over it, causing him to use you instead of me. Another word where you can see Holden being genuine is when he uses the word listen. Holden got super drunk, like super drunk. He called Sally and he told her, "Yeah, listen, hey, I'll come over Christmas Eve, okay? Trim a goddamn tree for you, okay?" And this was way past midnight. The way Holden uses the word listen here, followed up by a crazy and rude proposal, portrays Holden as not the brightest kid. I mean, he's only calling Sally for the heck of it just because he's drunk, which is not genuine at all. But then you see Holden using the word listen with his younger sister, Phoebe. When they met up again, Phoebe refused to go back to school even though Holden offered to take her back. So then he says, "Listen, do you want to go for a walk?" Unlike the way Holden uses the word listen with Sally, being drunk and all, he uses the word listen with Phoebe with a completely normal statement. I mean, his younger sister didn't want to go to school, so he goes like, "Alright, listen, you want to go for a walk?" Like, "Oh, you're such a nice brother." The way Holden uses the word listen with Phoebe shines a positive light on him, and maybe even fellow older brothers can empathize with him. But we can all see Holden being genuine with Phoebe. Phoebe was the only one Holden can be truly real with. When they were talking together, Holden asked his younger sister if he knew a song that goes, "If a body catch a body coming through the rye, I like, but..." Phoebe cuts him off then, 'cause she knows what's up. She knows that the poem actually goes, "If a body meets a body coming through the rye." In the poem, when it says body meet body, it's quite literal, but Holden decides to ignore that. Instead, he also shares with his sister that he has this huge vision of all these kids playing in the field of rye, and he watches over them on a cliff. The field of rye, Holden imagines, is full of children, innocent kids who have not yet to experience the fake world. That's why Holden wants to stand at the edge, catching all the kids who fall into adulthood and lose their innocence. He wants to preserve innocence by becoming the catcher in the rye. What a book title reference! But Holden knows that's hard. All this time he only wanted someone to talk to, but no one wanted to listen to him, being adults in this phony and fake world. That's why the only way Holden can continue to truly believe himself in a world so corrupt and so fake, the only way Holden can continue believing his thoughts and preserving innocence is by staying in the mental hospital.